So like you might imagine, in Livewire, you can actually nest components. So we could extract this little bit into a child component called, let's say hi, okay? And then we'll create that child component, artisan, make Livewire say hi, okay? And then we have our class here, and we have our view, okay? And now inside of this, we'll say hello, but we still want it to be dynamic, so we'll say hello name, and then inside of say hi, presumably we would pass in an initial name. So in our mount method, we can accept name, then we'll say this name equals name, okay? And then declare that public property name. Great. And then going back inside hello world, we'll pass it in as parameters. So say hi, name is name. Great. Now if we refresh, there we go. It says hello jelly. And if we wanted, we could add back in, I actually put it in the clipboard and then I lost it in the clipboard. You saw me cut it. You'd think I would paste it. Input, text, let's wire model name, just so you can kind of see what's going on here. So there we go. That's pretty much the same exact behavior as before. But let's go back to this hello world component and let's make names, let's say names. Or name, we'll say names. So we're going to turn this into an array and we're going to say Jelly Mon Chico. Okay? And now we can actually put this inside a for loop. We could say for each names as name. Okay? And for each, put this in right here. And now, let's check this out. We have Jelly Mon Chico. We have 3 of those subcomponents. So I click something and it updates. I click something and it updates. I click something and it updates. So this is fine, but there are certain cases where Livewire has a hard time keeping track of which one's which. So if you're used to something like Vue.js, when you nest something inside a for loop, so let's say that we had, I don't know, inside Vue, you might have div and then v4 equals item in items. You have to add this key equals like item.id or something like that. And this tells Vue.js to know how to keep track of this loop when data changes when it re-renders. So Livewire works the same way, and the equivalent in Livewire is saying key, and then you pass in some key. It can be whatever you want. In our case, it could just be name. If this was an Eloquent model, you could say name ID, something like that. So that's just a note that you'll probably run into issues somewhere along the road if you don't add this key when you're looping through nested components. So there you go. You can nest components, that's fine. Maybe let's show a little bit of a better example. So in your mount method, you might have something like, you might be working with actual Eloquent models. So you would say like contacts equals, and then grab a Eloquent model called contact that I already created. And then your data might be contacts. Okay? So I haven't actually covered this yet, but you can store Eloquent models or Eloquent collections as public properties. You can't bind to them in the same way you would bind to normal data, so you might think that maybe you could do something like this, contact.name. You can't do that because it's an Eloquent model and you can't just bind to some piece of an Eloquent model. But anyhow, you can store them as public data. So now we have contacts. Let's change this to contacts, and then name is going to be changed to contact. And then inside our say hi component, we'll go inside say hi, and say hi. And now in our mount method, we're not accepting a name anymore. We're accepting an entire contact model. And we can even type hint this if we really want. Okay, contact, and then name, we're going to switch to contact. And then hello can be contact arrow name because we have an Eloquent model now with a name property. Now let's check this out. We have a problem, illegal offset type. Oh, what did we do wrong? Well, let's just sanity check and see if I can easily find it. If not, I'm going to have to edit the video. Hello contact name should work. This contact, all should be good. Let's go inside hello world. This might be useful to you to see how I would debug something. First, I'm looking for obvious problems. It's probably this. I'm passing in a full model as the key. So what if I just pass in name? And now it works. Okay. Hello Chico, hello Fabio, hello Bingo. There we go. That is nesting components. It's a pretty powerful little pattern. One thing that is helpful to know architecturally, let's actually go into say hi, and I don't know. So we're going to go into say hi, and we'll add a button that just refreshes the page. Where click equals refresh. There's a magic refresh that I haven't covered actually, but it's in the docs. You can do money sign refresh for any action, and it'll just refresh the component. So let's say refresh. Okay, and then each of these, why don't we just add on, let's say a PHP date time now, so that we know when the component's been refreshed. And then to make this even more complicated and spin your head even more, let's do the same thing inside the hello world component. So we'll add a refresh button at the base. Let's add a horizontal rule. Then we'll add that refresh button. And then in here, we'll do now. All right, so this is going to give us full visibility into which parts are refreshed when. Okay, so we got a bunch of refresh buttons in a bunch of these components. If I click refresh in the parent component, you might think that Livewire is going to refresh that component and all of its children, but that is not how it works. So watch this. Refresh just refreshes this parent component. All the children are left alone. This is actually a feature because if you look at the payload that goes back and forth, let's take a look at network. Let's take a look at XHR. We hit refresh. If we open up the payload and we look at the HTML that got returned, you'll notice that there's no children returned here. There's just these stubs, div wire ID, div wire ID. You don't have to know everything about them. You just have to know that child components aren't rendered from the parent on subsequent requests. So again, I know your head is spinning a tiny bit, but I'm just going to keep iterating the nature of this architecture because it actually has some really huge distinct benefits and is really helpful to know. So I hit refresh. It just refreshes this component, just refreshes this component. Notice when I refresh a child, it doesn't automatically refresh the parent. So parents and children live sort of independently of each other. So we can do something like this, and now all of these payloads don't have the entirety of the entire page in their body. So it keeps the AJAX request small. It keeps them all stateful unto themselves, okay? So that's just kind of a helpful thing to know, that if you have a Livewire component that gets really, really big and your requests are getting slower because the payload's getting bigger, you can break sections out into subcomponents and you're basically reducing that payload size by however you want to. So it gives you full control over that whole system there. So also you can manage, let's say instead of refresh, we do something like, I don't know, remove contact. Yeah, does that sound good? What if we do this? I'm just kind of riffing here. What if inside the loop, let's wrap this loop inside of, we'll wrap this inside of a div, okay? And then inside of here, we'll have a button and wire click equals remove contact. And we're going to pass in the contact ID. So we're using blade echo to say contact, or we'll just pass in the name because I don't even think this has an ID, okay? Name, and that's a string, so we have to wrap this in strings here, and we'll say remove. Okay, now we don't have that wired up yet, but let's just see what it looks like. We have remove there. Okay, now in this parent component, we can have a method called remove contact where we pass in the name. Now we can say contact where name is name, get the first one and delete it. Okay, and then let's see if this works. Hit remove, and nothing happened. Why did nothing happen? I don't actually know. It should have happened, but it didn't. And I'm recording this live, and now I have to freaking edit this. Oh, unless there's something obvious that I missed. Remove contact, contact where name, first, delete. You would think that this would just do what you want it to do. Maybe we'll do this. This contacts equals and sort of refresh the list of contacts. Yeah, this might just be an eloquent thing. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Remove. There we go. Oh, so I'm just going to leave this in the video actually, because I've been told a bunch that the most valuable things are when I'm struggling and how I think about things. So it's not a Livewire problem. That's just an eloquent model problem because as soon as it hit remove contacts, this context was still set to all of them, so it just kept showing all of them. We need to kind of jolt it and refresh the context with what's from the database. So there we go. That's an example of nested components. Parents can manage them. If the parent deletes a child, it will delete in the front end, but parents and children are independent of each other when it comes to the request. So that's some helpful info on nesting components. That's pretty much the 101. There's not a whole lot that you can understand more about nesting components than what I just showed you. So hopefully that was helpful and didn't spin your head too much. And hopefully I gave you some actual useful things, some useful knowledge that you might not just like read in the docs. This is the kind of thing that makes these videos maybe a little bit more educational. So there you go. Thanks. Hey, so real life flesh future Caleb here, after editing this little video, with a message for you. I made 0 cuts on this video. The less cuts I make, the less editing, the more I like making them. So for me, this is a great format. It makes the videos a little bit longer, but you get to see things like how I think about things in real time, how I might solve a bug as it pops up. So if this is useful to you, see, I'm not going to cut out that little useful to you. If this is useful to you, tweet at me or something and tell me. Also, you see my hands moving, which you don't normally see. I'm Italian. Tweet at me and say, I dig it. I like it. This is a format that feels a lot better to me. If you feel like, oh, this is so unpolished, you should get your act together, then tweet at me that as well. Just be nice. So thanks, Future Caleb, signing off.